welcome to another episode of Sports After Dark with Kayla and David. You guys are going to notice something in our edits we did here. So we actually shot these episodes on different days just because I was out of town for this weekend and there were a lot of things that happened that we wanted to make sure we got into one full episode for you. So you're going to get us earlier in the week and us Sunday as this is being shot. We just want to make sure we get you guys up to date stuff and in our shows so that we know that we were paying attention to everything sports, not everything just sports, but everything going on in the world right now, because there is so much going on in the world right now, not just with life individually, whatever you're going through in life, but even just what's going on in the world right now with people we've lost. And I want to start kind of, we didn't get a chance to talk about this last episode, so I just want to make sure we got this, but I want to talk about Malcolm Jamal Warner passing away this past week. That was tough. I'm not gonna lie. My girlfriend actually texted me and said, "Oh, he died." And I said, "Well, what?" He was like, "Yeah, it was a drowning while he was on a family vacation." Such a sad story. That you go on vacation and you think you're going on this family vacation, and unfortunately, whatever you believe, but he got called to the other side during a drowning. Apparently, it was a major wave, and he wasn't able to come up for air, kind of drowned under the pressure of that wave. When I look at just Michael Jamal Warner, I'm not going to say I was a Uber fan. Like I kept up with him after the Cosbys and his childhood, but he was definitely just like a major. He had a major impact on my childhood growing up. I mean, seeing that show before school, seeing how energetic he was, his personality, even sometimes catching a couple of his posts on social media, whether it was Instagram, Twitter, or other spaces, and how positive he was. We need people like that in this world, that just remind us every day that we are good human beings, and we care and want to share the wealth of experience with other people. And what's really sad is his last video on Instagram was basically him preaching about just being positive at all times, and his excitement for his vacation with his family. And you know it just goes to show you that we all have an expiration. We all have a day that comes, and you really have to just relish in that and live. And just to kind of break away real quick, that's why take care of my parents is so important to me, because it's just like you never know. And it's not just my parents, but me too. Like there are people who are dying in their 20s and their 30s. It can happen to anybody at any time. And I don't want to depress or funk up the show, but more of the story is just really hold those that you care about close, especially whether it's friends, family, someone you haven't talked to in a while. And then just ask yourself, when you're going through, when you haven't talked to somebody, or you're having a disagreement with somebody, or you fought with somebody, just ask yourself, like, after the fact of, as it's at, after it's happened and time has passed, like, is it really worth you hanging on to? Because I'm not saying you have to talk to everybody. We can all be adults and move on, but some people keep grudges for years, and it's like, once people are gone, or once you're gone, you don't have that opportunity to just, bury that hatchet internally for yourself. So when I saw this one hit kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was almost as heavy as when Kobe passed away, at least for the community and the people that he touched. You know, from his contributions to the Cosby Show, obviously, to what he was after his career on TV was over. So rest in peace, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Definitely impactful soul, kind soul. Always had a smile on his face, gave us memorable moments. And he's definitely going to be missed.
I think you did a good job with that. I really only watched The Cosby Show when I was at my grandparents' growing up. It wasn't a big show, but when his name came across the screen at work, because I was at work with him passing away, I did know who he was. I think that you had a lot more to say than I could ever top, so you don't need to hear me try to compete with that. But you hit a good point about taking care of yourself, and you know if you are experiencing something, whether health related or other medical reasons, you really need to listen to your body. And I know a lot of people, "Oh, I don't even have an established primary care physician. Like, I don't go to the doctor." And it's like, even if you like, you need to have one of those for one, but even if something's not wrong, just getting a wellness check of, your even your vitals or your blood, or you never know when something that you can't feel pops up, and I think that's sometimes what ends a lot of lives too short. Obviously, drowning is not that. I'm not trying to compare, but, um, that's a big deal, I think, to look at. I've always been a proponent of you need to be established with someone, you need to be able to check in with your body. And I've, been doing that more. I signed up for pelvic floor physical therapy after
Yeah,
getting my referral for it, something that I hadn't done since North Dakota.
yeah,
Um, Really, it was the referral that was standing in the way, but it's also funds and it's also priorities. And, that's going to help take care of issues that I have going on in my life that I've had, since I was a teen or even before that. Um, and then just getting other stuff done. Like I even have an MRI tomorrow for something. So it's like,
yeah.
while I want to make excuses of why I don't want to go get these things done or spend the time or spend the money, your body tells you something
Yeah.
usually pretty often. And going once a year, I think, can be okay for some people. So,
No, no, for sure, for sure. Like I said, I think that stuff's always important. I think as a man, I held back so many years from going to the doctor because I was afraid. And I'm telling you, seeing my dad and him, being sick and having having to deal with a lot of stuff, and then obviously seeing the road to his recoveries really nudged me to be like, okay, you're still at an age where you're still young, you can catch this stuff early. Definitely get tested, so important. I want to keep it going real quick. I just want to get all the unfortunate news out of the way. I'm sorry, guys. I promise this is not the show, but this is also news that's happening. Hulk Hogan also he passed away, apparently from a cardiac arrest situation. He was rushed to the hospital, died at the hospital. This one's a little, I have some feelings about this. I know I've had some time to kind of see how other people have honored his life and his legacy. It's very controversial. I mean, I guess we have to start with the fact that, he was obviously a major part of, anybody's child. If you ever watched wrestling, which I did when I was growing up. I watched him in the Attitude Era. I didn't really catch Hulk Hogan's earlier career, but when he was part of NWO, with Scott Steiner and Big Diesel, right? That was really a monumental time, and he definitely evolved as a wrestler and just changed the industry, being able to take WrestleMania, which is supposed to be this big event for wrestling where thousands of people come together and watch a big wrestling event in NFL stadiums that sold out even back in the day.
mhm.
He was the first one to kind of kick that off, and I'll say this: I think we have to address the elephant in the room. It was really disappointing later in his career to find out about the recording, the controversial recording where he used the racial slur and word as a black man. It's really unfortunate because it disappointed me as someone that was got into wrestling partly because of him and seeing let me tell you something, brother. The ripping of the t-shirts and all that. It was great, but it was disappointing. But and I'm glad that as he moved away from that, seeing how he kind of continue to kind of work on himself as a person. I can't tell you that I think finding that information out kind of changed my perspective on him. But still, as somebody that was a wrestling fan, and growing up seeing him, back against The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who was in wrestling for a time, Stone Cold Steve Austin, all the Shawn Michaels, all these iconic wrestlers, and seeing how SmackDown recognized him and really kind of put a bow on his career. Really sad. I think he was 71. He was in his 70s. He still was obviously still in the gym, cranking it out. So he looks very good for his age, moved very well for his age. And again, we just lost another, a legend. But I think his legacy is gonna surpass everything, that he unfortunately died from this past week. So just really mixed emotions about him. But I'm thankful that I got a chance to watch him as a kid and say, you know what, that's cool. He's one of the people who got me into wrestling along with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. He made wrestling cool, and I think that's really the legacy that he's leaving behind here. So that's my
Mhm.
thoughts.
And I think, his platinum blonde hair and mustache
Heck
and
yeah,
his look could be spotted wherever he was going. And, you see him walking on the street and you have no doubt who's on the street with you or who's on the other side. And I think, I think that's kind of cool because no one's gonna pick me out of a crowd walking down the street. So he
Yeah,
was he was always okay being putting himself out there. And
right,
you know, I'm not saying that the recording is something good at all, but I found that you know, even after that, I feel like that pushed him in a different path of being out there than what he necessarily was known for or wanted to be out there for. But I almost say that it made the later stages of his life or what he came back to do for wrestling better because it was acknowledged and then he tried to build from that. And whenever I get into kind of this mental, like, oh, he did this outside of his sport, so how does that make him look with his sport? I try to separate the two and go, this person is really good for the entertainment value or the sport that he contributed or she
mhm,
contributed to. But I also have a right to feel that I'm not okay with this outside of sports. And it's not just sports. I mean, a lot of people have that with politicians. I mean,
sure,
not to bring the president into it, but like, oh, I don't like half the stuff Donald Trump says, but is my life currently going in a better direction because some of his um, executive orders or policies or whatever you want to call them leading my life better? Yes. So while I really want him to work on his public addresses or just him in public in general or choices that he makes,
yeah,
that has to be kept separate from the also all the positives he's doing for people, not just me, but so many. So
yeah,
I kind of relate to that with Hulk Hogan. And obviously, you and I look a little different, so I
yeah,
don't always know the impact
right,
that some things have and vice versa.
sure,
But I would like to think that, I can still respect what he did for wrestling and how he brought families together different nights of the week
yeah,
and what that meant as a bond, but also understand that, okay, this other part of his life that became public is not okay in
yeah.
any way. And juggling that, I think, will always be hard, but I think there are ways to juggle it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We mentioned last week, a couple weeks ago, we touched on the NFL collusion article, and it was some interesting stuff in there. I'm going to set it up and then I'm going to pass the time. But basically, essentially, it highlighted two pretty much Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, and I believe I'm missing one more person. So help me out.
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray. There you go. So apparently, there were owners doing contractual negotiations that were kind of using, backdoor talk to limit how much they were getting paid. And there was an article that kind of brought some damning evidence against that. And we talked at nauseum about this a couple episodes ago, and we have an update.
Yeah, so to build off of that, this 61-page document came out that was obtained by a longtime ESPN analyst, Pablo Torre. He was on his show with Mike Florio, somebody who's known in really multiple sports, but also in the NFL world. And it was talking about how the NFL and senior leaders for the Players Association struck an unusual, odd confidentiality agreement with what David is talking about that hid details of an arbitration decision from players, including finding that the league executives had gotten together through those back doors to reduce guaranteed player compensation. And we dropped a couple names, Lloyd Howell. He took over 2 years ago as the executive director of the Players Association. Well, a couple days after we did that episode, he resigned from that position. He released a statement that I won't read, but it pretty much takes one of the only avenues out that he could without admitting to all of the wrongdoings that he's had before, during, currently. Um, he was under scrutiny for maintaining different jobs while working for the NFL, including a private equity firm that holds league approval and ownership in the NFL, and what came out when he worked for this renowned company, Booz Allen, for a sexual discrimination and retaliation case. So like a lot of stuff came up. He's a really fishy dude, but he resigned, and then a day after that came out, ESPN reported that he currently is under investigation for the union hiring. No, let me get this right. He is being investigated by an outside investigator that was hired by the Players Association to look into strip club visits and who paid for them, who paid the transportation from wherever he was to them. Basically, he's using finances, again, misappropriating them for public gain. And, it came out that a staggering like $740, which is not a lot of money to people in the NFL, but was used on a one-way trip to a strip club. So it just leads to be seen what else he spent money on during those trips, if it was more than these strip club visits, which I have to imagine it is. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So not only did he have to step down because all this stuff in the 61-page document is true, but now he's being investigated again for misuse of funds, and
Right.
that's why he's not a Booz Allen anymore. Like
Yeah.
it, it it's mind-boggling.
It's definitely mind-boggling. But
And then the
I'll
other name
yeah. Go ahead.
that came up when we were originally bringing this.
Okay. Hello?
You still there?
I'll sit here. Yeah. There you
Can
go.
you hear
Go
me?
ahead. I can hear you. You
Okay.
good? Yeah, you good. Go for it.
No, it's okay. Speak on that part before I get to JC Treader. You can edit all
No,
I
no,
say.
no. I was gonna say, events like this is just, I think we all in the back of our head kind of, we always question the validity of the result, right? We're always like, is this really, are they doing the players justice? Is the league, really pushing and peddling a team that they want to peddle, or are they, keeping these players from getting a certain amount of money because, at the end of the day, I kind of touched on this before, they want to put the money back into their pockets. And so it's just really, sad because a lot of these players, I mean, we're literally watching it right now during training camp. They're getting injured. Things are happening. And you hear all the time on these shows, they talk about like, oh, well, now the team should wait to pay these players, or now they shouldn't get what they're worth. And I think as fans, we have a wall of like short memory, right? We're just like, what have you done for me lately? Well, you got hurt. So I mean, is it wise to pay somebody who's injured in that position? But it's like we forget about the 2 seasons, 3 seasons of hard work they put in to grow, to get to these opportunities, to get to the negotiation table and say, well, look, I play a violent sport that doesn't afford me the longevity of having a 10, 12 year, or guarantee, I should say, 12 to 15-year career. So,
Mhm.
it's really sad that this is true. This is not just allegations, but that, obviously, because when somebody steps down or something like this happens, at least for this piece of the conversation, there is some type of validity. There is some type of smoke. There's a fire in the house, and I think it's one of those situations where we're going to start hearing more things come out, perhaps as the season goes, and more people come forward saying, "Well, you know what? This happened to me," and obviously there should be a formal investigation to make sure that those things are true. But it's just really sad that you have a machine that is the NFL that has billions of dollars on the backs of NFL players that get a fraction of it in terms of having being under $200 million cap that continues to rise, obviously. But they're talking about extending the league 17, 18 games, right? Going more games, less preseason. Oh, let's put a second buy-in. It's money, 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 money. But the money's not necessarily always going back into the player's hands. So, and it's just like, again, I've told you before, like, I've become pro player because I understand at the end of the day, these players are putting themselves at risk and they should be getting the opportunity to negotiate their deals in fair environments that aren't tainted by perceptions and or already a pre-notion of how negotiations are going to go from the team or front offices or unions because they negotiate this stuff every 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. And NFLPA as well as the NFL owners to make sure that there are fair contractual, agreements in place and that, things like this don't happen. And the fact that it has happened, it's just, I think it's just really unfortunate from a trust standpoint because it's like, well, if they can't negotiate in good practice, like what else are they doing? So hopefully him stepping down along with the other findings in this article, it causes some of these owners as well as the contracts and how they're done moving forward to change because this shouldn't be happening in the league and there's really no place for it in the league. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, anywhere. I think that was well said. The other part of this that I was starting to get to was J.C. Treader, who has served as the chief strategy officer for the Players Union after being the NFLPA president for a combined total of 6 years.
Yeah.
He also resigned from his position. And I think so. He released a statement that couldn't be more vague. I won't read the whole thing, but he basically addressed that he doesn't have interest in being that executive director anymore. Which is a job that he was, running for. He's let the executive committee know, and that he's going to leave the NFLPA because of the stuff that came out in the last few weeks. He understands what's going on, what this union and the league have become. He doesn't want to be a part of that. He doesn't want to see that. And part of me is just like, all right, so you are admitting that there are problems throughout this whole thing between the Players Association, the league, everything in between. And he also addressed that. Now, while he didn't say who or how many of these who's said to him, their frustrations, their feelings on this, enough made it known to him that he wasn't welcome, is
Yeah.
what that tells me. And,
Yeah.
while I still think the players should be sharing this document, sharing any articles related to the document, now sharing more in-depth info about these resignations, like they need to be screaming from the mountaintops. The fact that they've at least said, hey man, like whatever you agreed to is not something that is going to ever be okay again.
Yeah.
And in that process, what he fell in love with, as he claims, with the
Right.
idea of what the place could be, is
Right.
just not something in his vision anymore.
Right.
And he had I want to say a 2-hour long interview with CBS Sports.
Yeah.
And he still defended the process of hiring Lloyd Howe and the changes that he enacted that he claims were voted on by the players. And at this point, like, are you just trying to save some kind of face because in a few years you hope this blows over, you can run for something again? I don't know. But his statement, what he says about the players saying to him, and then still defending himself 4 hours on things directly related to this it's insulting. I don't have a better word for it. I don't like that is still coming about in the wake of what players have said to him, have said publicly, what these quarterbacks have found out about, their contracts. But now it's not just quarterbacks. They're, I can't remember the number they said named were affected, but you're seeing while training camp's going on that guaranteed money is the issue in some of these players not signing their contracts. And it's like, I would hate to be league owners right now or team owners right now because, this just came out and you're going to limit or have a different number from your contract number to your guaranteed money. Like, I wouldn't sign with you either. I would point to this these cases, this article, this investigation, and be like, you want me to play for you? Give me this. And Trey Hendrickson's holding out, and he
Yeah,
literally said he was in Florida because Trey Hendrickson, who plays
for the
defensive
Bengals.
end for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah,
I have to remember that sometimes you gotta just, my mind is going and it makes sense to me, but my viewers might need to catch up.
right,
Um,
right.
Said that he left Ohio after in the process of negotiations because he wasn't
Yeah.
going to report to training camp, and he was like, "Yeah, didn't sign anything because the guaranteed money's not right." And it's like, damn, okay, well, yeah, now that's going to be an even bigger deal for players because they know that they were colluded against to be gypped of their contracts. I would do it too.
Yeah, and I think to your point, that was a good example because I know that he's kind of the talk right now because the Bengals have put so much resources on their on the offensive side of the ball, and I know recently that uh, Shamar Stewart, who was another name, he held out and recently signed his deal, which I think is worth over $18 million for the next 4 years. We're going to start seeing this. I mean, this is just going to become the new norm because these guys, in the world of NIL, where they're getting basically that type of money in college, they want to make sure that these deals are ironclad and rightfully so when you're a first and second round pick, to make sure that you're getting your worth. And again, you may believe in your mind, and that's really unfortunate that there wasn't a shred of accountability of like, you know what, hey, I recognize this is a mistake, and maybe that is a period of growth for him. Maybe that's maybe a couple years from now. We don't know, but in the moment, I just think that there needs to be a setting where there was like, hey, this was a mistake, an error, a low point. We did try to take advantage of these players, and at least have the integrity enough to leave on that note. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really sad that that's the way he chose to kind of exit in the interview, which is basically kind of like I want to save face. I want to make it seem like, oh, well, the players agreed to this. We were just doing what we thought was best, and you know, maybe so, but we don't know. But how it looks at face value and how everything kind of how the chips fell after the fact, it should have been more of a, hey, look, our intent was to do this, we did this, and hopefully by me, stepping away from this, and the next person taking over, business can be done in better faith. So, I would really tell you guys, to definitely look at this article. I'll post the original, link to the podcast we got this from, as well as the update, so you can read this for yourself. But a lot of players were impacted by this. A lot of players, who may have already had their deals, such as Lamar Jackson, and I think in 2023 when he signed the deal, to even Russell Wilson, what happened in Denver, to him going over to the Steelers and currently with the Giants. And even to some people that you see in free agency, you ask like, why my team not pay him? Like, this may have played a role into it, because when you have a lot of influence behind closed doors, that's really going to push some of these owners to be like, well, do we really want to pay this, or do we really want to put more emphasis on this position? And I just think that the number one thing that I would be surprised to look at is to the running back position, because I just kind of feel like not many running backs get paid unless you're like special, like you know uh, Barkley, as well as you know um, Derrick Henry, who are special backs, but you don't see too many cases where those running backs are getting paid second and third contracts. It just doesn't, it's not a sexy position, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
looked at or seen as a position where you put a lot of money into. So hopefully, I hope that the league can really move into a direction where there's more honesty. And again, there will be another negotiation coming up soon between the two sides. And this, when you do stuff like this, it never goes away. It will always be remembered, and people will want to go, be more aggressive to make things go their way. The product is these players, and when you're not honoring things and you continue to kind of do shady stuff, it's going to come back on you always, and it always will. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's my thoughts about it?
And even if, again, JC Treader, for example, it doesn't have to be a job in a professional sports team. It could be a job, I don't know what he would do outside. I'm not going to try to make it up. But like on your resume, you list these things and it's like, oh, you only held this last position with the NFL for since October, and you resigned
Yes,
the
yeah,
following summer. What happened? And then you have
yeah,
to go into it. And then these people that are in the hiring process with you potentially will look up your name on Google, will see all of this negativity, and it's like, wow, if he would have just said, yeah, I was responsible for leading
yeah,
these discussions or organizations in the
yeah.
wrong way, I'm going to do better. Okay, then I would feel different about
Mhm,
hiring you. But no, saving face, he would have been better off admitting to all his wrongdoings or
mhm.
whatever he wanted to admit to, falling back in the shadows for a
Yeah,
couple years and then trying again.
trying
Cuz
again.
me,
Yeah,
I'm not hiring you after this. I don't care if you want to be
yeah. His rep's
a
over.
bagger at the grocery store. Like, what if you lie
Yeah.
to me about what somebody scammed out? I don't know.
You don't know. You really don't know. We're gonna start here with our wellness check-ins, basically, where we just talk about what's on our minds for the week. And I've been watching a lot of singing shows lately. The latest one I watched was on Netflix. It's called Making the Band. I don't know if people have heard of that. It's basically 50 random singers that come together and they're trying to make a band, like a boy group, girl group. It can be 3 to 5 artists, and they're trying to come together and pretty much make the best group possible. And I think they win like $500,000 at the end. They got to compete against 6 other teams. And Kayla, as I was looking at this show, it dawned upon me what is wrong with competitive, singing shows when it comes to, you know, just my interest and where I'm at lately. It used to be that singing shows were authentic, right? It was like, it was cool. But now you always have this story where, I'm singing for my life. I was born on the side of the road underneath a bridge, and you know, this is all I have left. And it's like they sing, and it's like, well, wait, you're kind of not the best, singer. But if I say that, I'm an a-hole because I'm insensitive to your story, and the voters are going to vote for the actual story, and the less talented person never really wins. And it's just like a complete, like just like a whole 360 of just like what it used to be. Well, I'm gonna say 180, what it used to be, right? And now these seasons are more or less about the story. I don't know. We got to vote for the story, not the talent, not the reason why we have a competitive show. We got to vote for the sob story. We got to vote for, the tear jerking stories and the journey, and let's bring the kid out on stage, and then come to find out like this was an influencer the whole time. Just messed up stuff going on in these singing shows. I don't know how you feel about it, but I just had to get this rant out of me today because this is really what I was thinking. Because there is going on right now in Making the Band, where it's literally like the guy is like, yeah, I got to win this competition because if I don't, my parents are going to lose their house. Which is, by the way, I'm not an insensitive person. If that is true, I hope he does win. But it's just like, I don't think he's the best singer. I think there are other talented people, and I think those stories kind of overshadow the better singers from winning those competitions. And I think it's BS. Okay, enough is enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I stopped watching America's Got Talent because it was just whose story's worse, what abuse did you have? What near-death experience did you have? Why were you in an orphanage? Like, I can read about that and we can talk about it, I guess, but can we just get on with your little act?
I'm trying to say, and I can't relate honestly when it comes to knowing how these people feel. But if I was somebody that I knew I was better than the person that I lost against, and I just didn't get it because of the story, I'll be pissed personally. But that's just me. That's just me. So we're gonna move on. This week we have a new segment that we're introducing called "Calling Your Shot." Basically, I'm this about pretty much taking whatever bold claim you want to make in the sports world across any sport, honestly. And we came out with two this week. Um, and the first one for me, I'm looking at the Detroit Lions. I'm thinking that they're going to take a step back this year in terms of what they are. I'm not saying they're not going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be a wild card team versus winning the division. I think losing an offensive coordinator as well as a defensive coordinator is huge. And when you have continuity, and Jared Goff, I believe, is dependent on having a good structured system, and he can also make the throws for you. But obviously, if the system doesn't allow him to make those throws, or the wide receivers take a long time to develop the play or whatever, it can really throw you out of sync. So I think that Detroit wins 10 games this year. I don't think that's enough to win the division because I have Minnesota winning the division. think that the Bears could be a sleeper this year because I think they have Ben Johnson, who, guess what? He was with Detroit last year. So I think that, you know, he could he could go to Chicago and really tear it up. So we'll have to see how that plays out. That's my first bold claim. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense that Detroit takes a step back. I mean, I'm secretly hoping that their offensive coordinator succeeds, mainly because we both have the same last name, John Morton. But also, he's not new to Detroit, which I think is going to help them maybe not regress so far back. He worked with Ben Johnson a couple years ago and then departed to be a passing game coach for a different team and then came back. Um, but I think something that we have to analyze is the offensive line for Detroit. Frank Ragnow, their longtime center, retired, and they also lost a guard. His name is escaping me right now. But they've had some changes. Right now, Tate Ratledge is slated to start at center. They drafted him in the second round this year, and they did sign Taylor Decker again. Actually, no, he's just injured. I don't know. Edit that part out. Just go after the Ratledge piece. But their offensive line, if they can't run the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery like they have in previous seasons, it's not going to open up the passing game like Detroit is used to. So I really think the offensive line is going to be determinant of how this team does. And I know you can say that for a lot of teams, oh, they don't have an offensive line, these people have to work harder, blah, blah, blah. But I really think that's the key foundation on how they've been able to run their offense. And their defense has allowed a high amount of points per game. So if they can't stop somebody or they are as average as they were last year, some might argue below average, then Detroit really is going to struggle if they can't figure out their offensive line. And obviously this is all speculative, but they have enough talent and mouths to feed on offense, but if it doesn't click, it doesn't matter.
That's a good take. No, I definitely agree, and I think we'll have to see how they look in training camp. That'll be a good indication, right? If it's kind of like it doesn't look as smooth, or Jared Goff's deficiencies in his game start to really turn the corner for Detroit. I would say just be patient that first month because they have a very serious schedule ahead of them. I think they played the Ravens and a couple of other heavy hitters within their division very early. So it could be one of those 1-3 starts, maybe 1-2 starts, but just be patient, stick with it. Don't panic. Moving on to another sport. This is my second take of calling your shots. I believe, this is evident. I think Caitlin Clark, as much as I love her game, I think she is the female Steph Curry. She is having a sophomore slump, and the numbers say she is. She can't stay healthy on the court. She's been on and off the court, but her team has been winning in spite of her not being on the court. I think they're kind of teetering on being 500 or a game above 500. So maybe they're good enough, maybe in the back end of this season to make the playoffs, maybe. But they're a very fringe team right now. I think I saw a statistic, and maybe you can comment on this. She shoots I think she shoots her very well at home from 3-point land, and then I think she is in the 20% tile on the road behind the arc. That is pretty much her signature in terms of her game. So it's to shoot the three at a volume. So when those aren't falling for your team and you're shooting like 6 to 10, maybe even 10 to 12, depending on it, you're going maybe 2 for 12 on the road. That's how you lose your team some games. So I think it's just one of those things for Caitlin. It's like all eyes are on her because I think she came out very strong last year. I think she was pretty much everybody got behind her because I think the league wasn't as welcoming for her, and also she had some spats on the court, which I'm not really a Caitlin Clark apologist. I think there's some both things going on with her and Angel Reese on the court, and even this year, like I just kind of feel like I don't know. I'm a little disappointed because I just felt like, okay, she just played a full college season last year, so I can understand if the numbers weren't there. But this year she kind of had the year off to let the body rest and come back and maybe see if she can kind of take this thing back to her Iowa days. But I mean, look, it's a W at the end of the day. The W does have tough players in it, so the fact that she's not quite performing to her standards, I think, says a lot. But it's just rather surprising. So I'm saying she's having a sophomore slump right now, and maybe in the back end of the season she can figure it out. But so far, she's been very disappointing to say the least. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Caitlin Clark's numbers being down. I think it was shocking to a lot of people when the commentator in, I believe, the last game she played said that it was her second made 3-pointer on the road, and we're at least a third of the way through the WNBA season at this point. And I think she's had to take a lot of adjustments, more adjustments than people coming out of college in any sport have to go through in the majors. I feel like it's an odd situation, right? Like the media reports about all of her successes, but then hyper focuses on when she's fouled heavily or when there's a scuffle like you brought up, or different players' opinions on Caitlin Clark. And I'm not saying that they should just shut up and dribble, but as the WNBA players, like, she is the reason why ratings are higher, viewership is higher. The league is more competitive. They circle the Fever's games when they play them on the schedule. So, like, they're aware. And the fact that jealousy is making people create scuffles or say stuff on social media or say stuff in interviews about her, like, you would think you would be at least understanding of how to be grateful that the WNBA has been pulled up out of the dirt. As sad as that is to say, as somebody who played women's basketball for a while, it's no secret that they don't make the same money as the NBA. They struggle with revenue, they struggle with talent, they struggle with viewership. Like, they're trailing the NBA and many other leagues in all of those departments. So working with Caitlin Clark while still being competitive, like, nobody asked them to be her friend. Nobody asked them to treat her differently on the court, but nobody asked them to come up and shove her so that she face plants into the court either. So I think that is kind of steering away from the initial sophomore slump question, but when you're being targeted by players just because you're good at basketball, like, that's going to get in your head too.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I mean, look, I know a lot of people on ESPN say this, but like, I mean, obviously, I think because of this past draft class, I'm not just going to say Caitlin Clark. I think there are players now that are starting to, especially the young woman's name from Las Vegas. It slips me. Aces. Help me. It'll come to me. But you have stars that are starting to attract, a lot of NBA players over, and it's gonna bug me now. Because I feel like people in the YouTube section be like, "You should know who this is. You know who she is." Oh my god! I'm going to the Aces roster, y'all, and I apologize. I know I'm not invited to the cookout because I told Aja Wilson. There you go. I had a brain fart. So Aja Wilson, Caitlin Clark. I even think to an extent Angel Reese. I even think to an extent I like what's the name, Buckets. What are the young ladies that came out of UConn? Yeah. I think those names are starting to really build star power, and I think that hey, look, you protect your star power because again, those are your money makers. Those are the ones who are going to start filling up those arenas because of their fan base, and hopefully, we'll see what kind of happens as the season progresses. All right, it's all you. What you got?
Yeah, so I went 2 NFL takes on this one just because it is the start of training camp, like David mentioned. I was trying to think, what are some of the big storylines, and I wanted to pick a running back battle of somebody who's coming in as a rookie that could be the starter in the backfield for a team. And as I was going through it, I just couldn't pick one over the other, so I decided to take the stance of 2025 drafted running backs taking over multiple backfields. So
Okay.
I have Denver, I have the Chargers, I have Las
Mm-hmm.
Vegas, New
Mm-hmm.
England, possibly Dallas, and then I just threw the Giants in there because we've talked about Cam Scattaboo on previous episodes. But just looking at it, Denver, so they drafted RJ Harvey,
Mm-hmm.
and he is currently in a competition with J.K. Dobbins, his first year in Denver. And Dobbins has had consecutive season-ending injuries in his career when he was with Baltimore. So he is a little bit older than Harvey, even though Harvey is going to be a 24-year-old rookie. But Denver, they target their running backs out of the backfield. They had the 10th most receiving points in for fantasy football purposes last year, which transitions to being in the top third of teams who pass to their running backs. And in college, stepping away from just being a pass catching back, he led all of college football in rushes for 15 yards or more. So making a big impact in being able to catch the ball and rush the ball. He's younger. He's likely faster. He doesn't have the injury history of Dobbins. So I think that is a big camp battle to watch. And then it shouldn't be a surprise for the Chargers. So they acquired Najee Harris in free agency from Pittsburgh, who didn't re-sign after his rookie contract with the Steelers. And then they drafted Omarion Hampton. He was in North Carolina. And before Najee Harris went and almost blew his eye out with a firework, there was already,
Oh my
in a
God.
4th of July celebration, there was already talk about Hampton just being this big 6 foot, 220-ish pound guy who just barrels over you like a bowling ball, but is also elusiveness, could create big plays, and he has the stamina to be a 3-down back. So I think that for a team with Jim Harbaugh, who really likes running the ball regardless of who's in the backfield. I mean, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards last year, who left Baltimore to come over to Los Angeles, he used them a lot. And it was just injuries that kind of got in the way of the complete consistency for the season. But I think Hampton is built to take on a load where he might garner more carries than most teams would give a rookie, especially if he wins the job. So I think that's something to watch. We also don't know when Najee Harris is going to come to camp. We don't know if he's going to be ready for preseason or the start of the regular season. Like, superficial eye injury doesn't tell me a whole lot. What his
Yeah.
agent said he suffered. Like, do I think he got legit shot in the eye with a firework? No, because then he would have lost his eye, or he would be dead because his head exploded. But
But can we admit though, like he would look badass with like a patch over his eye? Like he's already a kind of a big guy, but can you just imagine him running onto the field with like a patch on his eye? Like, I'm about to run you over. And it looks like some
and I
evil
only got
villain.
one eye.
One eye.
But the job of a running back is
Yeah.
to basically have more than 2 eyes, scanning the
Yeah.
field, finding the lanes. So if half of that is taken away, then what are we doing here, I guess. So moving over, we know that I wouldn't really say this is necessarily a battle. We all assume that Ashton Genty is going to start for the Raiders. They took him really high in the draft, 6th overall. They did sign veteran Raheem Mostert, and they have, guys like Sincere McCormick, who ended their season early last year due to injury. Samir White, same thing, got relegated. He started for them last year. Now he's 4th on the depth chart. But I think the veteran presence is going to help teach Genty. I don't really think there's an argument here about, why he's in a battle. I don't even really think he's in a battle, but he just kind of aided to my rookies taking over. And then similar to Hampton, up in New England, we have Travion Henderson, who was drafted by the Patriots this year. And his route running combined with his pass blocking is something that I think is going to really shine in New England's offense, because Drake May had no time last year to throw the ball, and as a rookie, you
Woo!
saw him get pummeled behind the line.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped by bringing in Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins in the wide receiver
Mm-hmm.
room. They drafted a couple guys. But they need somebody out there who is going to provide more time. This could
Mm-hmm.
also be a whole offensive line discussion too, but for
Oh
sake
yeah.
of this argument, having a running back in there who you might hand the ball off to, but could also just post up and allow you 2 more seconds to throw a long pass, like, is something that you need too. He might not see like the raw volume because he's viewed as a key blocker, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, the formula here for Henderson to be successful is something to keep an eye on. Ramondre Stevenson didn't light it up. I mean, you have players on teams who struggle or don't have offensive lines that have very successful running backs, and Ramondre Stevenson didn't show me that last year, so I think that his job could be in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I don't know too much about Jaden Blue, but he was drafted by Dallas, and right now Dallas's starters are Javonte Williams, who came from Denver, who became a backup throughout the year, moved down the depth chart, like, just lots of questions there. And Miles Sanders, who was a starter in Philly before he went to Carolina. So everybody's kind of moving around, and I wouldn't say that the way the depth chart is lined out right now is how it's going to be. I think they just kind of threw him in there, and based on experience, it makes sense that Williams is there. Sanders has struggled, so yeah, we'll put him as a backup, and then we have everybody else. So I think that Dallas has a lot of questions, like the big names of George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb there with Dak Prescott's well and good, but you do need a running back. They had Tony Pollard, they had Rico Dowdle, but they got rid of Pollard, obviously, to Tennessee. And I think Blue can bring some elements that the backfield didn't have before this. I think to begin the year, I think the split would be the veterans.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Dallas is going to be able to deny the speed that Blue has, or
Yeah.
his route running where he can find the big lanes and zones. So I think that's one to watch, but not as exciting. Like that week one, I don't expect him to be starting. But as soon as one of those guys go down, because it seems to always be inevitable, he's somebody that you could stash in fantasy purposes or just have the name ready for when you're talking about, oh my God, what are they going to do? And the answer is probably Jaden Blue. And then we don't need to go into Scatterboo. I think he's going to be the starter. I'll probably just draft him for fun anyway. So.
Yeah. I would say, but first off, I'm gonna applaud you for remembering all those names because you're better than me. One person, I'm a little biased. Look, hey, I think another person to watch out for is going to be Caleb Johnson for my Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, seeming that they only have now Jalen Warren, who's in front, who he was a 1B last year, but I think because Caleb I'm combining names. Caleb Johnson is a bigger back at 6'2", 220. I think he provides a different rhythm that more fits what the Steelers want to do next year. So I think that you're going to get Jalen Warren starting this season, but I think that you're going to start to see more Caleb Johnson probably by week 5, 6, and beyond, because he's the type of back that typically the Steelers look for. And I think eventually the Steelers are going to want to kind of push him because they're not going to pay Jalen Warren next year. They're going to kick him to the curb. This was about bringing in someone that he can mentor this year and then go next year, because Pittsburgh never barely pay wide receivers, and they most definitely are not going to pay running backs. Just haven't traditionally done it. So we'll see what happens there.
So do you think then his outlook long term in Pittsburgh is going to be hindered? Like, is he going to be just like Najee and potentially Warren, and just be there as a rookie and we continue this process?
I don't. We talking Caleb Johnson?
Yeah.
I think Caleb Johnson's set up to take over and be the premier back for the Steelers for the next foreseeable future. I think Jalen Warren is there so that it's not all the pressure on Caleb Johnson like it was for Najee when he first got drafted. Because the thing about when Najee got drafted, he didn't have a vet to take him up to, say, hey, this is how you operate your body. This is how you pace yourself. It was him and Jalen Warren. They both came in as rookies, and they had to learn this thing on the fly. And this was a team that was trying to They were trying to contend under Ben's last year in the league before he eventually moved on. Oh, actually, yeah, he was drafted literally in Ben's last year. But I think with Caleb, I think what you're getting is, you have a lot of veterans around him now on the team. DK Metcalf's been in the league for some while. Aaron Rodgers been in the league for a minute. Giannu Smith's been in the league for some time. Pat Fryermuth's been in the league for some time. So it's just a matter of just more or less integrating himself into the offense this year, and we can handle the rookie mistakes because you're not the premier 1A back. You're more of a one. You're seen as a 1B right now, and we hope near the later part of the season you kind of kick in. So I think that's the difference right now between Najee and what Caleb Johnson's situation is. It's more or less he has a veteran to lean on than what Najee had. So yeah.
That's a good analysis. I will have to come to you whenever I have my Steelers related questions,
Oh
obviously.
yeah, for sure.
And then the other call my shot take that I have from the NFL is San Francisco's wide receiver Ricky Pearsall is going to finish as the wide receiver 1 for their team this season.
I got a question about this one.
Sure.
So if I'll agree with you, because I think that he's made leaps and bounds over the last 2 seasons with San Francisco, but now the room's starting to get crowded for San Francisco. You got, I know they just paid, one of what's seen as their number one, right? All this money, but then Jennings is kind of on the trade block now too, right? Because Jennings is 29, I believe, going on 30. And I mean, if Ricky Parcell takes that next step, I mean, do you really need Jennings when you can still work on a rookie contract with Parcell? Could he be on the move maybe at some point in the season to maybe a contender or even a team that's just looking for a wide receiver? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of variables here, and I think this is definitely a bigger shot than the running backs take. But Juwan Jennings, who you mentioned, is currently the number 2 in San Francisco. He did finish as the number 1 last year, but there were a lot of injuries going on. I mean, Pearsall was shot, so he didn't start the season when he was a rookie, and Ayuk suffered the injury to his knees. And, there's speculation or controversy out there that Jennings has already requested a trade. He came out and said that he didn't, but where are these reports coming from? It's San Francisco has worked hard to try to build this wide receiver room, so I would be surprised if they wanted to trade Jennings after they traded Deebo Samuel in the offseason. So I know that he wants a new contract, and that would assume that if he doesn't get one, then he gets traded.
Yeah.
At 28 years old, he really only had the one good year. Like, he had a good postseason the year prior, but he was the only option. So someone argue that, like Malik Neighbors or people who are number 1s on bad teams that are being force-fed the ball because somebody's got to get it, right?
Yeah.
That was the option there. And I think, if you're frustrated as a player, you're not going to try as hard, in my opinion, if you don't like the contract that you're on. There's one thing to prove in order to get a new contract, but he already feels he proved enough last year.
Right.
And there are a lot of people on both sides of that. Brandon Ayuk is, he tore his ACL and MCL. So that's a hard injury to come back from. And he's 27. He's going to start the year on the physically unable to perform PUP list for the NFL, and there's not a timetable for that return. And then people are like, "Oh, but Pearsall, he's on the PUP list also." Kind of, but it was just so that they could legally shut him down from training camp when he was experiencing hamstring tightness. So there are so many reports out there that he is not going to be on it very long. It's precautionary, it's something that he dealt with last year, which is true. And, I feel like people kind of get nervous when you see hamstring injuries because that could be lingering. I mean, it's plagued Mike Evans a lot of his career, and he's still been a great receiver. But I'm also in the fantasy mindset where I don't really want to draft somebody who constantly has hamstring injuries. But
I'm saying frustrating when you put your team together. It's like, damn it, why are you out again? Like, I need you this week. What do you mean you're out?
Yeah,
it's a game time decision. It's a locker. No, play. Put some dirt on it and play. You get paid millions of dollars. What are you doing?
Yeah, and he showed flashes. Pearsall showed flashes last year that made me believe that he can take on a high volume of workload. He's pretty physical. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head how much he weighs or anything like that,
Hmm.
but just looking at him, he does have size advantages over his defenders, and I I just think that he's gonna be better than an injured, disgruntled veteran in Ayuk, and I guess arguably a disgruntled veteran in Jennings.
For sure. No, I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. But like I said, we're gonna have a lot of conversations over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see. It's training camp time. It's time to see who makes that final 53. There are gonna be some heartbreaks. There are gonna be some veterans who don't make the cut. There are gonna be some trades because there'll be a lot of names, surprise names that could end up on that list. I think the Green Bay wide receiver core and even the 49ers or they have like 7, 8 wide receivers. I'm like, y'all got to do business with somebody eventually and give one of those. You're not taking 8 wide receivers into the season, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I
Um,
almost I almost made one of my hot takes Matthew Golden, but I didn't feel like I wanted to be drugged through the coals if I was wrong, so maybe that decision will come in later episodes, but I didn't do it today.
no, 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 no. So look, guys, there's a lot going on. Obviously, this is just a like kind of a appetizer to what's going to come in the NFL land. Obviously, training camps are going on. I mean, we might go division by division and kind of see what and check in and kind of see what it's looking like based off of how things go this week. So stay tuned for that. I know I'm gonna be respectful here because I know Caleb has to go here. We love you guys. Definitely, please subscribe to our Twitter. We are going to start being more active on there, especially now because it's training camp. I have a lot to say. I've been retweeting some things. I know Kay's
Mhm.
going to retweet some things about her Miami Dolphins, but she has a lot of things that I'm sure she's going to share. I'm in the process right now working on some other avenues for us in terms of how you can hear us, how you can view us. I know we're working on the Apple thing. We keep saying this. We're going to work on it. It's getting there.
We are
Uh,
looking into it. I
we are,
have
we
reached
are, we
out
are,
to some
we
people,
are, yeah.
to get some ideas, and I know that there are some topics that we wanted to discuss today that we have to push to other episodes, like,
Mhm.
we're gonna talk about recent signings, especially to the Commanders,
Yep.
and we had a huge break in the NFL-NFLPA collusion case that I am
Oh
ready
yeah,
to talk about, so that's gonna be coming on at least the next episode or 2 for us.
most definitely. So with that being said, you guys enjoy your day. I'm gonna do my day off, and Kayla, you have a great day at work. With that being said,
Questionably enjoy my day at work.
oh my gosh. Well, with that being said, guys, that's it. That's gonna do it for this week. We will be back next week after sports with Kayla and David. See you.